And we're back with Florida Senator Bill Nelson, who is in Orlando this morning. Senator, welcome. First, just your reaction now that the storm has made landfall. What's your assessment and what are you worried about?
Primarily, other than the Keys that are getting it right now, as the eye comes up the west coast, it'll be out in the water for most of the time. That means that counterclockwise rotation is going to take a wall of water into the bays and the estuaries on the Gulf Coast of Florida. So you look at big areas like Charlotte Harbor, which is just north of Fort Myers, or Tampa Bay, which is a huge bay. There's going to be a wall of water going up into them. It doesn't have any place to escape, and so it's going to wall up. That's going to be a very significant part of this storm.
When the water walls up like that, are you worried? There's obviously worried of damage to property, but is that something in terms of those who are in those cities now affecting them, storm surge into their houses? How does that play out?
Yes, and by the way, give a shout out to the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, all the NOAA satellites. They have been right on this track and the intensity. So people are well aware. And what they have said is hurricanes like this, a lot of deaths can occur from the water instead of the wind. It's hitting the Keys, for example, at about 130 miles an hour. The difference between that and 155 miles an hour, Category 5, is an enormous magnitude of difference. So the wind is not as much, but the water coming up the west coast is going to be a problem.
Senator, give us your sense. You just mentioned those federal assets that have been tracking the storm. What is your view more broadly of the federal response, or I should say in preparing for this storm from the federal angle?
It's been very good, and there is the cooperation between the federal level, the state, and the locals. That has been seamless cooperation. Unlike 25 years ago in Hurricane Andrew, when you did not have that cooperation. Unlike even Katrina, when you didn't have the cooperation and the communication between the Louisiana National Guard and the U.S. military. That has been taken care of now.
So in that cooperation and preparation, what then should we look for in the aftermath? So the storm will go through some areas. What then are the next steps in terms of a coordinated response to make sure people who stayed behind are okay?
That's when FEMA is in assisting the local governments and all the volunteers. That's the hard slog in the aftermath of the storm. And given the fact that this is now moving so slowly and it's virtually covered up the whole state, it's going to be a massive effort, not only at cleanup, but assisting people for the long term.
Now, from your position in Washington as a senator, what's in your mind in terms of the response? In terms, obviously, there's money, but in terms of responding and helping in the aftermath of this storm?
Well, remember, FEMA would have run out of money last Friday. And that's why I flew back from Miami to Washington to vote on that bill just in the nick of time, $15 billion, half of it to FEMA, half of it to local governments. But that's going to run out in a few weeks. So we're going to be back doing a special emergency appropriations in the middle of October.
And finally, quickly, Senator, you were an official in Florida who's dealt with these before in terms of insurance and that angle. Tell us your expectations of how this is going to affect homeowners throughout the state in the aftermath of this storm.
Now there is a big hurricane catastrophe fund. It's a reinsurance fund. It's got billions of dollars of reserves. People should be well off because the insurance companies won't be going bust like they did in Hurricane Andrew.
All right, Senator Nelson, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll be back in a moment with a look at the damage Irma has caused outside the United States.